Throughout the history of the Godzilla franchise, the Big G has had several design concepts that never quite saw the light of day, usually attached to entire projects that met the same fate. While they would ultimately go unutilized in any feature film, television series, or otherwise, they are interesting and worth looking over in their own right. And that's just what I'm doing today. Here are some of my thoughts on unused Godzilla concept art. So first we have some of the unused design concepts for the 1983 Godzilla King of the Monsters in 3D film that was originally supposed to come out. It was going to be directed by Steve Miner, who directed the second and third Friday the 13th movies, as well as Lake Placid, which I've done a review on, so if you want to check that out, go ahead. But anyway, more importantly than that, as it relates to this video, is that Godzilla himself was being designed by William Stout, who's a great artist who's done a lot of really cool concepts and just general art stuff over the years. He's also written some stuff, like remember that terrifying giant scorpion episode of the 1998 Godzilla series? He did that as well. But he's done a lot of really cool dinosaur art as well, so he was kind of the perfect choice to helm the design aspect of this particular version of the character. Now, one of the modus operandi of this particular planned version of the character was to have Godzilla's head more closely resemble a Tyrannosaurus's, and you can kind of see that in a lot of this concept art. A lot of the available art for this movie is mostly storyboards, and that's where we can get the best possible look at some of these. You've probably seen this one before, which is the big series of storyboards that were meant to depict what this Godzilla would have, somewhat looked like. And I gotta admit, some of them, they actually do look pretty cool. I don't know if I entirely agree with the philosophy of trying to make Godzilla look more dinosaurian, because the thing with Godzilla is that even though he's often depicted and thought of as such, he's meant to be more than just a big dinosaur. He's a monster. He's not a dinosaur. That's the reason. I mean, he is a dinosaur, but he's meant to be more than that. He's meant to be more of like almost a demon or something. You can see in this one here in the upper left that apparently, I don't know if this is just meant to be Godzilla hunching over, or if this is actually what his posture would have been for the entire movie, but you can see him, he's kind of leaning forward a bit, kind of more in line with what was becoming the standard for dinosaur depictions in the early 80s versus what they were looking like in the 50s when Godzilla was originally designed. Probably my favorite image here out of all this series of storyboards is this one, where it looks like Godzilla is he tearing apart like a bridge there or something, and he's like snapping his head back and kind of tearing apart the cables. I don't know, there's just something about that looks really cool. And then there's this kind of goofy one where it's like his claw coming towards what would be the camera, and he's got this big toothy grin on his face. That one's silly, but I kind of like how it looks. It's just, there's something indescribably appealing about it. And we've also got this one, which was not really a storyboard. This was more just plain concept art. It's Godzilla. I think this was like one of the earlier concepts they did for this movie. And I don't know if this is the final coloration that they were planning on him having in the final project, but you can see he's kind of a dull green, which Godzilla is traditionally depicted as being green, or such was the conventional wisdom of the time, at least in the West. Or honestly not, it showed up a lot in Japan too. I don't really know why. It's not like it's that hard to verify that Godzilla in most of the movies isn't green, but oh well. Maybe that Hanna-Barbera cartoon didn't really help matters, but whatever. Anyway, this guy kind of looks like the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla now that I look more closely at it, just maybe 10% cooler, and obviously with more detail put into the design. I don't know how I feel about this posture, because it's kind of, don't know, it's just kind of a weird position because like this one is more upright than the last one we saw, but he's still got a bit of a hunch to him. But his neck is in like this. He's got this weird, crazy, like really accentuated swan neck going on. And the face, he looks two parts kind of intimidating, one part just silly. All right, now the way they were going to portray this creature was through a combination of stop motion and I believe animatronics, which would have been interesting. Like seeing Godzilla portrayed with animatronics, we don't really get to see that very often. I mean, mostly in the Heisei series and also in the 1998 film. But aside from that, I mean, building a big Godzilla animatronic puppet, you don't get to see a ton. I think they built one for Shin Godzilla, but they ended up not using it, which is unfortunate because I think that would have been awesome. But as for Godzilla being portrayed in stop motion, I don't know. I mean, like, that was the original plan. Tsuburaya originally wanted the first Godzilla movie to be done with stop motion because you wanted it to be like King Kong. But I just feel like we've gotten so far away from that at this point, even by the 80s, I don't know if we could have, if it would have been right to see. It would have been weird seeing Godzilla in stop motion. That's just not his forte. That stop motion is King Kong's thing. All right, now we're moving on to another scrapped American Godzilla project, the Godzilla 1994 film, for which the script was actually written and is floating around somewhere online. Should be pretty easy to access. It was originally going to be directed by Jan de Bont, who shot a lot of really good movies like Die Hard, and also directed Speed, and also Twister and The Haunting, but you know, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, this was immediately after Speed, or I think during Speed, production, or at least a release that he was considered for directing it. So he maybe could have pulled together and actually done something good, but that's not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about, again, the concept art, and man, do we have a lot to work with this one. So the image that I just showed, as well as this original sort of study concept art for Godzilla in this movie, was done by Crash McCreary, who, if you aren't familiar with him, yes you are, you just didn't know it yet. But if you don't know his name, he is an artist, concept illustrator, who worked on a lot of films that Stan Winston was associated with. He designed a lot of the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park, among many other things. That's probably what I know him most for. That's where I originally discovered him, but he was very prolific outside of that. He did a lot of really great design work on a lot of really great and some not so great movies, but his design here for Godzilla, pretty basic, but I think it gets the job done. It looks all right. It's very clearly in his style of artwork. You can tell it was made by him, but you know, just being able to have it in like this nice kind of profile shot to really get a look at what he would have looked like. It's not especially meant to just look nice. It's more just to give the modelers a frame of reference for what Godzilla is supposed to look like. The posture is, again, it's slightly hunched forward, maybe giving him a little bit more of that, maybe leaning in on that sort of horizontal theropod idea more than previous designs, but obviously not as much as what this project and this concept for the film eventually ended up morphing into, which was the 1998 TriStar movie. But the tail is good, the legs are good, arms, don't know why he's flicking his wrists out like that, but aside from that, it's good. Head, I don't know how I feel about Godzilla having lips, to be totally honest. Like, that seems like an odd thing to include, but aside from that, no real complaints. This is a good starting point, but I think some people might see this concept and think, oh yeah, that was the finished design, that was what they were going to go for. But actually, no, that was not the finalized design that I think they ended up settling on, or were about to settle on before this version of the film fell through, and we're gonna get to that next. And heads up, it is even better. Look at this. Gaze into the true face of monstrous beauty that is this design for Godzilla. This was created by Ricardo Delgado, who is another very prolific concept illustrator and concept designer for a lot of movies. He's done so much work over the years. Again, just Google him or look him up on IMDb. He's done so much. And this was his design pass for what Godzilla would look like in the film. And oh my god, it is a thing of perfection, because it keeps the original concept and the original basic silhouette of Godzilla intact while still updating it and kind of leaning a little bit more into that fast and agile thing that Emmerich was so fond of. And this was before he even came into the picture, I think. But I mean, look at it, look at this pose. Look at how active and comparatively, not slender, but fit, I would say, this Godzilla is. He's like picking his foot up like that. Again, he's leaning forward a bit, kind of more like sort of a halfway point between full-on like upright and dragging his tail and what theropod dinosaurs actually stood like. The legs are perfect, arms are nice and beefy, spikes are good, a little numerous though, but that's no big deal. And the head, I mean, Delgado kind of gave him these blank white eyes, which I don't know if that was what they were going with, if that was what they were going to settle on, or if that's just what he looks like. That was just what he was going to look like in the concept art, but no real complaints about the head. I love the way this Godzilla looked. It would have been awesome if this had been the design they went with, because it's the perfect midpoint for me between classic Godzilla and what they ended up with the whole leaning into the whole fast and agile thing with the Zilla design, which just went a little too far away from what Godzilla is supposed to look like. But yeah, I'm not gonna beat that dead horse for too much longer. Point is that I really like how this version would have looked. It would have been great if this was the one they went with. There was also a lot of concept design work done for what Godzilla's opponent in the movie would have been, which would have been the Griffin. A lot of that looks really cool too, but I think for this video, I'm mostly just focusing on unused art for Godzilla itself, so I'm not going to be going over much of that in this video. Maybe some other time. And now, moving over to the Japanese side of things to finish off this video, we've got some art for a movie that actually did manage to get made. But I don't think it was quite made in the sense that it was originally intended to. This is some concept art for Shin Godzilla, and a lot of this stuff is about what you'd expect. Like, a lot of the designs here and a lot of the art pretty much translated into what we ended up seeing on screen, but I want to draw particular attention to a rather infamous example of that not being the case, and that is this, where we see Godzilla splitting into multiple versions of himself. Neat. Apparently this is what the original idea for Shin Godzilla would have been, is instead of having it start off as like a weird Godzilla that we're not used to, and then gradually mutating into something that more resembles the classic silhouette of what we imagine Godzilla looking like, it would have gone in reverse. We would have sort of a classic or more conventional looking Godzilla morph and twist and deform into weirder, more bizarro versions of itself as the movie went on. And the most well-known example of that is having this crazy illustrations like this, where Godzilla is splitting into two of himself, which would have been cool, would have been different, would have been really out there, but how well it would have gone over, maybe from the initial outset, I don't know. It would have taken some getting used to, I think, but it's definitely interesting to look back on this and see, again, what could have been, even if it's for a movie, unlike with the last two, it's for a movie that actually ended up seeing the light of day in some form. And then to end things off, as just a little bonus here, we have some of the very first concept art done for the first Godzilla movie, back when they were still deciding what this creature was even supposed to look like. And one of the designers submitted this illustration, in which the beast's head is supposed to resemble the shape of a mushroom cloud. Subtle. So yeah, that about does it for this video. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of other lost or unused Godzilla art, as well as art for other monsters throughout the history of this series. Let me know if you'd like to see any of that. I really am just barely scratching the surface here, but you know, I like looking at art like this and lost concepts and illustrations. I think it's really cool. So hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed looking over some of this stuff. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and until next time, see ya.